Everybody. So I've been where you have all been with being listening to the last speaker of the day, and I know what it stands between you and the prizes in closing ceremonies. So I will try to make this as painless as possible. Now, the good news is, in less than an hour, we'll be done and we'll be at that stage. The bad news is it's going to be an hour before we're at that stage. So we're going to talk about today decoding cyber and leadership. I want to thank B-Sides for the opportunity to be here, and James and his team have done a great job over these days. I think it's been a wonderful conference, and it's been great to be down here on the island to experience both the conference and the hospitality that we have here. What I want to talk to you today in my chat is really about what has happened. How did we get to where we are today with cybersecurity? And how really, and ultimately, the byline story is, how have I learned through my life really what helped me through everything that I've learned that made me able to deal with the cybersecurity challenges that we have today. Now, I say I have two clickers now, so hopefully I got the right one. There it is. So I was a child of the 70s, born in the 60s, grew up in the 70s. I watched the Flintstones every day. I would run home from school, have my lunch, watch the Flintstones, head back to school. We look at that now, and looking back, we say, wow, what a simplistic life back then. Sure, we had all these fancy things that they brought us, that we imagined dinosaurs and cars made out of stone and all the celebrities that came on. But overall, it was a pretty simple life compared to what we have today. As a child, I joined the Boy Scouts. I'm from Canada. Joined the Boy Scouts, really helped me focus on a lot of things. I learned two things that started my career that I got really excited about. One was about learning first aid and how to help people when they were in need and injured, and how I could take care of myself if I got lost in the woods. The other thing I learned was about computers, and the dawn of where computers first showed up was an exciting time, very simple, but yet as a child exposed to that. My first computer that I went out and bought on my own, I bought at Radio Shack, a local electronics store at the time in Canada. I put my money together to buy this color computer too. And sure, it played a lot of games, all 8 or 16 bits, but it got me on the path of starting to learn how to code, how to write in BASIC, and learn the power of a computer, that I could put in some code, and with 20 lines, I could make this little bar on the screen go from left to right. It was amazing. My first modem, my first connection to the very, very early internet was this device that I bought. 300 bits per second, not 300 megabits per second, 300 bits per second. I had to unplug my parents' phone line. They really didn't like that. Plug it into my computer, hook up to a bulletin board that had a dial-up number, and then in 12 short minutes, I could see a picture. When I went to the NASA website or their bulletin board, 12 minutes later, I was staring at a picture of the stars. It was amazing. Now, we look at it today, of course, and the capabilities that we have today, but trust me, in the 80s, this was the way to be. I went into, after I went to school, got a degree in many things not related to computers, but a minor in computer science. I became a paramedic. Long story how that happened, but I spent 10 years in Toronto, frontline paramedic, helping people, working. I was also a flight medic, many situations, very exciting but harrowing career. And then I jumped out of paramedicine and into IT and cybersecurity. Actually stumbled into cybersecurity. So you think about this, the late 90s, different times, security really wasn't what it is today. And so, as mentioned, I've worked for many, many large organizations through my career, head of cybersecurity, internet security for the likes of these organizations, both Canadian and in the US. And as mentioned, now I am retired from the corporate life and run a cybersecurity firm focusing on small, medium businesses and advisory services. Now, one of the very poignant quotes that has carried me through my career is this from Stephen Covey. If you read any of his books, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, one of the things that has always stuck with me is this quote: if there's one thing that's certain in business, it's uncertainty. And I think that really plays for all of us in this room when we think about cybersecurity. Because the one thing that we know in cybersecurity, the one thing that I definitely have learned over the years, and I'm sure you have too, is there's nothing static in cybersecurity. It's always evolving. I can very easily tell you that the challenges, the risks, the threats that I encountered in 25 years in the business, that I encountered early in my career, are nothing in comparison to what we see today and what is happening in the world today. So there have been some general business trends that have really formulated to where we are in the world today. Obviously, technology is a big one. Technology has changed so much. We are now in what is known as the Industrial Fourth Revolution, or Industry 4.0. We've seen drastic changes in supply chain and automation. We're seeing robots doing the jobs that humans used to do, and warehouses that are manned more by technology than there are by humans themselves. We're seeing loyalty programs and award programs, especially in North America. Consumers love loyalty programs. Who wouldn't want to get free groceries when one shops at a grocery store? But loyalty programs and the information that we share is very, very dangerous and very, very large as we talk about how much data is flowing through these loyalty programs. We talk about digital payments, the explosion of cryptocurrency, the world that we live in where, for most of my year, I don't walk around with cash anymore. Everything is either digital or tap with the credit cards. Who needs cash? But digital payments come with those risks as well. We see e-commerce. My goodness, it's amazing, especially when you live in a large urban center. I can go onto Amazon on a Monday morning and have something delivered to my house 4 hours later. I can order groceries and somebody will go pick them and bring them to my door. That's fantastic. Who needs to ever leave their house? But e-commerce is everywhere. E-commerce, it's all driven by the internet and our abilities to use technology. And then we have things like data analytics, data. There is so much data out there. We have data that we don't even know exists about ourselves and everything else that is spread everywhere. And in fact, 92% or over 92% of all the data that is collected has been collected in the last few years alone. We rely heavily on data, and it is that data that is getting a lot of organizations and consumers into trouble. And then we have, of course, cognitive technologies. AI, my goodness, you can't go anywhere now without talking about ChatGPT and everything else that goes with it. The emergence, the explosion of artificial intelligence is really changing not only the way we handle our lives, but the way as cybersecurity people, not only makes our lives easier, but it also makes it more difficult at the same time. So the fourth industrial revolution. Quick video I want to show. I'm sure many of you know what it is, but let's take a quick look at this video. So the numbers are staggering now. It is predicted that a mere 5, 6 years ago, there were already 10 billion devices hooked to the internet. That number has already been figured to already have doubled in the scant few years between 2017 and now. And that number exponentially, they figure, is going to grow over the next couple. They say that there is a device connected to the internet for every single person on Earth. And that number expected to get even bigger. And the amount of traffic that is flowing around the world is in words that I'm not even used to saying on a regular basis, like zettabytes. The staggering thing that I find that's really weird, but you think about it, they figure that almost everything in one day will be connected to the internet. And we're already seeing that. IoT, Internet of Things, there's so many things that are connected to the internet. My house alone has 43 devices connected to my Wi-Fi. And no, I do not have a server farm in my basement. We're seeing appliances now. It's getting more and more difficult to buy a refrigerator that doesn't have some connectivity. And we're even seeing tags and RFID embedded into clothing that we buy today to help us with our exercises and staying fit. Truly, there is a lot of data out there. Data is the new oil. So back in the 70s, everything was about oil. It was the commodity to have. But now it's data. We are buying data, selling data. It is in good places. It is in bad places. But it is of value to so many. And so it has become extremely important for all of us to be protecting it and to be working with that. We're seeing electronics, connectivity, we've mentioned. Everywhere we go, we are looking at data and connectivity that we, from a cybersecurity lens, have a responsibility for. Almost 100 years ago, Nikola Tesla, so he was the inventor of the electric motor and AC current, alternating current. This was his quote back in 1926. Basically, when wireless is applied, all things will be able to be simplified, and a man will be able to carry wireless in his vest pocket. Okay, we don't wear vests like we used to, but you get the gist. There already was a prediction of what was going to happen. And quite honestly, it's amazing, but it's frightening at the same time. ChatGPT, wow, our lives as practitioners in security is going to benefit from the likes of ChatGPT and other AI. It's going to help us do better at finding malware. It's going to help us better at being alerted and notifying and determining the effects of things. But of course, there's always a bad side. We're going to see new malware, new coding, new abilities that are going to be wreaking havoc on us and our organizations that we're going to have to deal with. We're going to see more and more attacks on robotics and the automation side. You imagine all those robots that exist, all are run by software. And all it takes is an attacker to go in and manipulate the code, and we end up in a scenario where we might have inaccuracies, deficiencies, loss of control, loss of functionality, and even data exfiltration. Fun fact, Amazon, the largest company running robotics, they have a fleet of 200,000 robots in their data centers worldwide. And if you've ever seen them, they're primarily those little squares that go under the big stacks that the pickers have, lift them up, move them around. 200,000, all following a predefined line getting from point A to point B. But just last year, they introduced ones that don't work that way anymore and are able to work independently and figure their way out. Autonomous, we call it. We've seen the rise and the predictability of quantum computing. It's coming. Those amazing new computers are coming. But they're going to potentially wreak some havoc on what we have to deal with. And in our world, we think about cryptography. Now, we'll always have the camps that say, no, our current encryption is quantum resistant. But is it really? Time will tell if that's truly the case. And of course, we don't even have to go into the effects of cryptocurrency. Anything that involves encryption and what it could mean. We see criminals monetizing their ability to manipulate through their threats and through their exploits, including taking over computers for crypto mining, which, yes, still exists despite the ups and downs of cryptocurrency as it is today. So really, as a child, I thought we lived in a world of simplicity with the Flintstones. Now, as I work within cybersecurity, I think we live more in the world of the Jetsons. The Jetsons, by the way, came out in the 60s. It was set in a date in the future, obviously, 2086. So still 60 years where we are today, but 60 years ago this show came on. I was just taking notes on how many things, I'm sure some of you have seen the Jetsons, how many things that are already here that were in the TV show. And I just jotted down a couple of them. The mobile phone, video conferencing, connected treadmills, online shopping, virtual healthcare, and of course, robots, particularly robots that clean your house. So all of these, and this is just a few, all of these were imagined by creators of a cartoon 60 years ago, yet here we are with these things true. Don't have the flying saucers yet, but they're coming. They're coming, and you know they are. In fact, it feels like, yes, it's great that we're in the Jetsons, but it really feels like we're in the world of the Terminator and the rise of the machines, with all the move up we have, with all the capabilities with machine learning and artificial intelligence. I don't know how many of you were fans of the Terminator show. I found it amazing. But it was the ability of the machines to learn that ultimately led them to taking over the world. Kind of a frightening idea as that exists as it is. So cybersecurity. All of these things that I've just talked about have created this very growing industry. It's called cyber security, what all of us are in. And if we really define it, and it's been defined here by the National Cybersecurity Center in the UK, the protection of devices, services, and networks, and the information on them from theft and damage. So we learn, as we become cyber professionals, we learn about people, process, and technology. We learn how all of those have a role in our ability to protect and defend our organizations to which we have a responsibility. But we know that that world isn't perfect. Despite people and the process and technology, we have technology that sometimes we don't use it properly. We know that there's technology put in place to protect our organizations that maybe have not been thought through or really designed with the true picture in mind, not photoshopped, by the way. And then we know from a process and technology state that we can build processes, we can tell people what to do, but we all know what the weakest link is out there. It's not us. people bypass the capabilities that we have, not once, but twice, just in case you couldn't read it. Twice take over a physical security capability that we put in to protect. And just that action by one person removes all the security that's behind it. And we all know all it takes is one click. So going back, as I said, I entered into cybersecurity in the late 90s. Before Y2K, I kind of got on board where everyone was like, don't talk to us, we're busy with Y2K. But I can tell you, in the late 90s, early 2000s, the emergence of the internet came. And I can tell you, having the internet in the turn of the century was really a really neat thing.
Some people think the internet is a good thing. The most powerful educational tool the world has ever known. It's preserving our history, making sure that in the future we never forget the past. When disaster struck Asia, the volume of aid donated by ordinary people through websites outweighed that of their own governments. The internet is a place that is free of state regulation, censorship, and control. The only place where freedom of speech truly exists. Orwell was wrong. It is not the state that holds all the power. It is us. Some people think the internet is a good thing. What do you think?
So just in context, this was a commercial in the UK put out by AOL. If you all remember, of course I age myself so many times, back in Canada we would get these discs all the time in the mail, CDs, you'd put it in your computer and it allowed you to connect, any consumer to connect. They would keep coming though. They would come and they come, you could only use so many coasters and Frisbees. AOL put out this commercial to try to help people understand how great the internet was. And the internet was great. I mean, even as an early person in my role, I started my cyber career in a finance company where there was no security. I wasn't even doing security at the time. They held on to investment funds for parents. They ran a fund that parents could put in money and make sure that they had a college fund basically for their children. They had, at the time, $700 million Canadian in assets, and all stored in a database. And I remember going to talk to the DBAs, and they were showing me this, and they're like, oh, look here, see, this person has this much money, and this person, look at this account, it's very large, and here's you, by the way. And I'm like, whoa, well, what if that's wrong? They're like, oh, we just can go in and change the numbers. And I thought, hey, this is really cool. But then it was like, whoa, this is wrong. And so I went to go talk to the CEO, and I coming up, and I said, hey, by the way, I was in there, and I really think we need to do something. Or not that we don't trust the DBAs, but I don't think that's a good thing. Therein launched my career in cybersecurity. Michael, do something about that. So that's how I started in cybersecurity. From there, I went and I worked at a very large oil and gas firm. There were two of us for a company with, I think we had 12,000 employees. But security was so simple there. One person was responsible for access management. They handled password resets on the network, and they dealt with resetting and setting up and terminating accounts. My job was on the network security side. And that's what we called it back then, by the way. There were so many names, IT security, network security. I worked for help desk somehow once in a while, worked for the legal department, worked for the IT, obviously. But that was the function of the job. My job was on the network security side, and I had to try to make sure that antivirus software was running on people's machines. Now you have to understand, for those that aren't as aged as I am, that back in the 2000s, not everyone had a laptop, let alone a computer. And very, very few people had internet access. It was the privilege of the few. You had to be a CEO or someone important in the company or work in sales to have internet access. But nonetheless, I had a job. This was my biggest fear every day when I came to work, that I would come in and log into the brand new marketing website and feel that somebody overnight had gone in and cracked it and broken in, or had left some really horrible message denouncing something and laying claim with some funny face that would laugh at me. That was my job. And trust me, I took it very seriously. But you know, our problems back then were all based in IT. All we ever did was deal with it at an IT level, and it never got to leadership. They never knew what was going on. We would have a virus outbreak on 100 machines. The CEO probably never ever knew about it. We always contained it within. But look at the world today, right? We are seeing cyber attacks increasing year over year over year. We're seeing phishing attacks skyrocketing. And you know, we are in a world now where there's so much impact and in the news all the time. We see large corporations everywhere being impacted by cyber attacks and cyber breaches. We are seeing impacts even here on the island where worrisome, no matter how small you are, we are seeing threats every day. We are seeing emergence of denial of service attacks and attacks on our infrastructure, attacks on our supply chain, heck, attacks on our aquariums at a casino in Las Vegas. How dare they? By the way, $35,000 they got out of this. But then, you know, from a leadership perspective, we're seeing a lot of outcomes as well. We're seeing organizations befalling to large cyber breaches. We're seeing CEOs and senior leadership ending up losing their jobs because of the size and the ferocity of the attacks that are happening. It really is a perfect storm where all of this stuff is happening now. The sophistication, the capabilities of the threats are ever evolving. It really is a cat and mouse game for all of us. And I got to tell you, there are some really, really smart threat actors out there that know a lot of stuff. We are seeing teams that are overwhelmed in their capabilities and their technologies. We have shortages of cyber staff. They're saying now there are over 5 million people globally working directly in cybersecurity, like all of you. 5 million. That's great, because a few years ago it was under 3. The problem is that there are 3 million vacancies in cybersecurity globally today. There are not enough people working at it. I can tell you, when I entered into cybersecurity, there was no training. There was no school to go to. There was no dedicated degree program about security. So we've come a long way, but we have so much further to go. And we have increasing impacts and costs. We're seeing sophistication getting larger and larger. The costs to deal with it going higher and higher. Close to $5 billion now on average for ransomware attacks. And we're seeing cybersecurity be a multi-trillion-dollar industry between the money that is made and the money we spend, or our organizations spend, to protect us. It really is a world for leaders of organizations to understand now, unlike what they did when I first started, the ramifications and the impacts of what cybersecurity means to their company, the financial toll that it can take, the reputational toll, and of course the share value. We're up in Canada, and right before Christmas, one of our top 3 grocery chains had a cyber attack. They were able to recover within a couple of weeks. $32 million it cost them to recover from somebody clicking on a phishing email. It is not a cheap world that organizations have to deal with. And of course, the reputational hit from that as well is quite large. We see really as practitioners then in a world and as leaders where we struggle to really understand or to help our organizations understand what they need to do, how to do it. And they really need the leadership both at the company level and at the security level to be able to understand what to do, how to do it, how to deal with these challenges like missing people or lack of availability of staff or budget restraints, etc. It really is a world now where the internet maybe isn't the good thing that it once was.
Some people think the internet is a bad thing. Somewhere your identity can be stolen, your home invaded, and your savings robbed without anyone setting foot inside your door. It is one of the most dangerous weapons ever created. A way for the unhinged to spread evil free of supervision or censorship. A place for mankind to exercise its darkest desires. An open market where you can purchase anything you want. Orwell was right. The internet has taken us to a place where everything we do is watched, monitored, and processed without us ever realizing. Some people think the internet is a bad thing. What do you think?
So I probably forgot to mention that AOL also put another commercial out, also warning people about the internet. And I wish they would do that today. We're not seeing it nearly as well as we do. We have a great representative here on the island teaching us about cyber safety. But let me tell you, over the many years leading up to now, that didn't exist. And consumers especially really don't know what is ahead. So as leaders, as practitioners within security, we really need to understand how to tackle this. We face the challenges of budget restraints. We face the challenges of these increased attacks. We face the challenges of new technology that it's very hard to keep up with. How as leaders can we manage that? Well, I told you I was a Boy Scout. I told you how I loved learning and got into computers. Another thing that taught me when I was a Boy Scout was the 12 rules of being a Boy Scout. And we had to learn these because it was kind of like the guidebook, the rules that we had to strive towards in order to be a good scout and a good role model and representative to society. Can we turn that, though, and learn on how that can help us be better cyber leaders? And I think it can. So let's take a look at some of these. First off, the first rule of being a scout and cyber leader is that we have to be trustworthy. We have to tell the truth, keep promises. People depend on you. And that is the reality. As CISOs, as leaders within cybersecurity, we are always in a role of trust. We are the base that people come to when there is an issue, when there is a threat, when there is something that we have to worry about. And trust is the pillar to that. And we have to use that trust in order to help us do a good job and help us build the confidence within the organization. A Boy Scout and a cyber leader has to be loyal. Show you care about your family, friends, school, and country. Okay, that's fair enough. But as CISOs, we can translate that really into, we need to bring support. We need to show our ability to our friends, our colleagues, our employees, our organizations, that we are there to help them and we are there to support them as they grow their business. We are not a gatekeeper. We are there to help build. Boy Scouts have to be helpful. We have to volunteer. We have to help others without expecting reward. Okay, that's what volunteering is all about. Absolutely. But we have to think of that as leaders to go beyond our towers. We have to work beyond the how does this impact me when something happens? And we have to understand that we have to be out there within the organization and giving them a hand. We have to be friendly. We have to not be the gatekeepers. I can tell you, I went through phases of my career where my job was to say no, 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 no. Anytime they wanted something, no, can't have it. And they go, oh, darn it, okay. I also went through a part of my career where I said no, and they said, well, I didn't ask. Those aren't the models anymore. We have to work together with people in order to succeed in cybersecurity. We have to be courteous, always use manners. I think that goes without saying. Treat others as we treat ourselves. We want to be kind, never harm or kill any living thing without good reason. Okay, I think that's a pretty straightforward model for being a CISO. We don't kill. Okay, we may kill a process that is affecting a machine, but we don't kill or harm. Boy Scouts need to be obedient. They need to follow the rules, obey the laws of the community. And we have to adhere to that, right? We have a job to do. We have to stay within the lines. Sometimes it feels hard. I know all the times in my career that, we would get an attack and man, I just wanted to turn around and attack them back, right? Just counteroffensive security. Not always the best model to do, but we have to stay within the lines. We have to be cheerful, always look confident and positive. Trust me, when you are faced with a threat or a cyber attack, everyone's looking at you, you know that. They are all looking to see how you deal with it. You have to stay confident. You have to be prepared and ready, that not throw your arms in the air saying, man, we're pooched. We have to be the leaders when it comes to things like cyber attacks. We have to be thrifty. Okay, so this is good, not be wasteful. For a Boy Scout, it means, of course, saving your rations. But for a cyber and CISOs, it's really about understanding we don't have unlimited budgets. I don't think I ever had an unlimited budget in my career. I think the closest I had was going from there is no money to, okay, if you help explain what you need, maybe we can give it to you. So we have to realize that as CISOs, that we do have to be somewhat thrifty, but we have to spend the money in the right ways, not buy the shiny new object, but understand what the needs are for our organization. As leaders, what can we do with the resources and the funds that we have in order to best protect our organizations and the information that's within it? And we have to be brave, okay? We have to face those difficult situations. As I mentioned, everyone looks to you when there's a cyber breach. You have to lead by example. And finally, we got to keep clean, help in home. Our job is to keep our companies safe. So, Deloitte put out this many years ago to kind of show the four faces of a CISO. If you think about it as leaders and aspiring leaders, all of these are very key things that we have to follow. We have to be a guardian. Of course, we have to protect the assets. We are the representative within our organizations that is tasked with and paid to protect that business. So that will always be there. But how do we do that? Well, we have to be a strategist. We have to help work with the business to build a strategy. We can't just wing it as we go through our careers. We have to really have a mindful of what needs to be done, how I'm going to get there. We have to be an advisor to the business. We have to help them understand where security fits in their roadmaps. We have to help them understand that security isn't a crossing guard or a border stop, but it still needs them to work with us in order to accomplish what they want to do, but at the same time, do it in a safe way. And of course, we have to be a technologist. Technology is out there. We can't be good cyber leaders without technologies. I can be a very practical cyber leader and have a lot of process and hire some great people. But without that technology, it's going to be very difficult. So trust. Trust is something I've mentioned a lot. It really is the fundamental piece that we all need to be considering when we work. Trust really is that piece that represents what we know, who we are, and helps us define who do we trust, why should people trust us, and really what is built into our ability to use trust as a model to help protect our organizations. When I was a paramedic, as I mentioned, I worked on the front lines. Typically, two people in a vehicle like this. There were a lot of times where I would go to some very serious scenes or some very sick people. And family members, patients would trust me. They had to trust me. I was the possible person that potentially could keep them alive if they were injured or if they were seriously sick. But I had a partner. I had to trust my partner. But I learned through my career that even though there were two of us working in an ambulance, there were many, many people around us. I wasn't the only person working that could help this situation or help this sick or injured person. I had firefighters by my side. I had police officers protecting the scene. I had other paramedics that were working with us. And when we got to the hospital, there'd be a team ready, if necessary, to take over and continue that level of trust. There never really was a time in the grand scheme where I was alone. And that was trust then that I would transfer from the patients trusting me to me then trusting others to be able to fulfill those things. And that stuck with me as I entered into my cybersecurity world. We have to trust people. We have to understand who to trust and who not to trust in our journey. So the last couple points I want to make today is really to help decode what have I ultimately learned in my career that has helped me succeed in not only being a great practitioner in cybersecurity, but has helped me fundamentally help the organizations based on all the pieces that I learned through my career. So first off, we have to embed cyber into the fabric of our business process. We can't just do things like cyber awareness or cyber training. We can't just go out and buy a new firewall. We have to have a mindset and a fabric and a culture where cybersecurity goes from just doing things to being cyber. Okay? We need our organizations not to check a box when we come by with the need to take their annual cybersecurity training. We need them to be part of it. And so as a CISO, we kind of look at a few different models. First off, and always will be there, is the tactical model, right? Best efforts, something happens, we're being slammed by an attack or a denial of service attack. We have to be somewhat tactical. We have to deal with it. The problem is there right now. We, as leaders, want to have a model of champions. We talked about it. We're never alone. You're never alone. So we have to work to build those champions with us. We have to trust others within our organization. Obviously, our team, if we have one, but cybersecurity isn't just about yourself and the team directly around you. It is about those within the organization. And so we have to build champions within our companies to help us accomplish that. We have to embed security and security-minded people in. We have to build leaders, and we heard about it in the panel right before me. We can't sit there waiting for that perfect person to come to us to be able to be that perfect analyst that we want to hire. A, they're probably already spoken for, and B, we might not be able to afford them. We have to find our cyber leaders from within. We have to bring talent, train them on the job. They may not be the perfect fit, but everyone has a bit of cybersecurity capability within them. And we have to utilize that capability, whether it be internally or people that are great to have in our organization, but maybe aren't the perfect ideal candidate. And we have to be leaders of participation. We have to be leaders that are not afraid to roll up our sleeves, not be afraid to get engaged and do things ourselves. I was very much an operational CISO. Yes, I put my coding days behind me, and no, I wasn't the guy, analyzing all the logs on the firewall. But I learned that I couldn't just be a tactical leader, I had to be an operational one as well. We have to educate our workforce. We have to not only educate our team, but educate, obviously, the whole company. Everybody has to learn about cybersecurity, and learning never ends. It's not a one and done. This past January, I went back to school. I'm going to get a master's degree in law, in cyber law. You never are too old or too late in your careers to learn. That knowledge and that message resonates, and it helps as a leader for you to ensure that your workforce, as I said, and your company is learning in the right direction. We need to share the strategies that we want in our visions of what we want to do with the company. We don't want to keep it nestled in our own little corner. We want to have a mission. We want to have a roadmap, and we want to share that with the organization. Not only our own leaders, but with senior leaders and with the board. And I would get in front of boards many times explaining the whys, the hows, the whens, and the what ifs. Okay, you need to be able to have that strategy and figure out. It can change. I can tell you, I've wrote many, many 5-year roadmaps that I struggled to get out of year 2 before it was already old and needed to be changed, and top priorities were crossed out and new ones were put in. But you still have to work on that. We have to build a risk intelligent culture. We have to think about risk. It isn't all about whack-a-mole and stopping something that happens here. We have to understand the risk to an organization. What will happen if our website goes down? What will happen if our customers in our company cannot procure things online, because that's our whole business model? What if our data is stolen from us? So we have to understand what that risk is, and we have to ensure that the leaders understand that as well. And finally, we have to be a company that just doesn't work on reactivity. We have to be moving from a reactive company to a proactive company, training, educating, putting in the tools, being prepared, having a plan. And ultimately, we want to be a resilient company. That's where we want to be. We want to be resilient so we can reduce the likelihood and reduce the risk. So in closing, are we in the world of the rise of the machines and Judgment Day, just like in Terminator? Maybe one day we are. Today we're not. We'll talk in 10 years and see where we are. But as leaders, we need to take some of those qualities that I've learned, that I'm sharing with you today, to help us be better at what we do in our own jobs, better at helping our organizations, and being prepared to do what we need to do in order to follow that definition of what cybersecurity is all about. Trust is, Eric Schmidt, who was the chairman of Google many years ago, came out with this quote: "In a networked world, trust is the most important currency." I totally agree. We have to be trusted ourselves as leaders. We have to trust others. We have to decide who we don't trust in this world. But so much of it hinges around making those determinations of where that trust should be and not be. And we have to not be afraid to put out that trust where we need to. and be prepared to deal with the issues that come from a breach of trust, from a lack of trust, and from overtrust. And that's it. Thanks very much. No questions? No? Awesome. See, we got on time. People are ready for closing ceremonies and the next steps. Thank you very much.